So morning agenda part 2. So now we move to look at the topic of skills and entrepreneurship and creative talent. And we will begin with a case study from Screen Yorkshire. We will then have a panel looking at that broader topic of investing in potential. And then we will have some early insights from some research being done by the Beyond team on the creative economy. So without further ado, happy to introduce Caroline Cooper-Charles, who is the CEO of Screen Yorkshire. Caroline.
Good morning, everybody. Not better. Everyone's slightly taller than me. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the introduction, Claire. Lovely to be here speaking to you all today. I'm Caroline Cooper-Charles. I'm the Chief Executive of Screen Yorkshire. We've been powering the region's screen industries for over 20 years in Yorkshire and the Humber, and we've helped transform Yorkshire into a world-class hub for production, talent and innovation. Today, I want to share with you a little bit about how we've driven that growth, built a skilled workforce, attracted major productions and supported creative storytelling, all while maximising economic opportunity. We've worked on major international productions, providing world-class support and attracting production spend. Our Yorkshire Content Fund has invested in more than 50 titles. Our first investment actually was back in 2012 in Peaky Blinders. That was when they needed our money. They don't anymore. But it is the gift that keeps on giving. And more recently, titles like Official Secrets and The Duke. From a £14 million fund, we managed to leverage £250 million of production spend, supporting over 12,000 jobs and a £1.1 billion turnover. Our film office offers a free professional service, crucial in making productions choose Yorkshire. Our crew service connects productions with local talent, creating jobs and ensuring that economic benefit stays in the region. Innovative training programs help us ensure diversity and build a robust, skilled workforce. And everything that we do is about long-term, sustainable industry growth. This slide shows the depth of impact of the Yorkshire Content Fund. Crucially, this is not just a one-time investment. We reinvest funds to fund future production, so we operate as a commercially viable renewable fund. That makes it a powerful, self-sustaining economic engine for our region. At the heart of our success is talent. We've created a suite of programmes tailored to all career stages, from Beyond Brontes, which opens doors for young underrepresented creatives, to Connected Campus, which links education with real-world careers, Screen Crafts and digital skills courses, which train in-demand craft and technical areas, and Next Level, which supports career progression. More recently, the addition of Screen Alliance North, working across the north of England, coordinates training to ensure access and quality. Infrastructure is also key to attracting major productions. From Versa Studios and Prime Studios in Leeds to Production Park, which has been mentioned earlier today, we offer best-in-class facilities. The unit provides a home for grassroots creativity. And CoStar Live, one of the CoStar network that's also been mentioned today, is the UK's largest R&D lab for creative industries and live performance, future-proofing our region's capabilities. Beyond production and training, we invest in storytelling and talent development. Programmes like ScriptEd, Flex and Loop support script editors, platform-hopping creatives and immersive audio drama writers. We also collaborate with major initiatives like Bradford 2025, this year's City of Culture, running short film and producer exchange schemes. It's all about amplifying diverse, original, regional voices. We're a one-stop shop for incoming productions with location scouting, database access and crew packages. We help shows like The Crown and Mission Impossible 7 and Bridgerton run smoothly. Our crewing service ensures these big productions create local jobs and they drive screen tourism, bringing visitors to Yorkshire locations seen around the world. First formed in 2002, we stepped in to fill the gap left by shrinking regional broadcast. We launched the UK's first and most successful regional content fund, and our Screen Industries Growth Plan, backed generously by the BFI, has driven long-term strategic growth in the region. And here's some of the results. We've helped generate over £1.1 million in turnover, supported 12,000 jobs and boosted tourism across the region. These aren't just stats, they represent careers, communities and the sustainability of our industry. Our purpose is clear: to secure Yorkshire's global reputation as a world-leading screen hub. Our vision is to be the best place in the UK to do screen business. And we're doing that by creating opportunity, building infrastructure, and supporting all of our creative communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you for setting the scene. And I mean, some obviously incredible statistics and achievements there. And Caroline is going to stay on stage here and chair a panel for us, which delves into the topic a bit more broadly in terms of investing in potential and growing creative talent. So I would like to invite the rest of the panelists on stage, please. Declan Keeney from Studio Ulster, Milivoje Gogovic, excuse me on my pronunciation, we haven't met yet to be able to fine-tune that, from FX3X, Anush Ter Kacharian from Creative Armenia, and I will hand over to Caroline to begin the conversation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Claire. So we're going to talk a little bit about growing creative talent across the economy, but before we do this, just for a little bit of context, could you just introduce yourselves really briefly, just to tell us what your role is so we can see how you're approaching this?
Of course, so lovely to be here. Thank you, Caroline. I'm Anush. I'm a creative innovator and cultural manager, and I've been running the programs at Creative Armenia Arts Foundation for over 6 years, and innovating the creative sector and the industries in Armenia.
Hi, I'm Milivoje Đorđević. I'm coming from Macedonia. I'm the CEO of FX3X Visual FX company. Mainly we do movies, but also we do some animations, and in general we also have a training center that is dedicated to our industry.
I'm Declan Keeney, so I'm Chief Executive of Studio Ulster, which is a large-scale virtual production studio complex we're setting up in Northern Ireland. But I'm also Professor of Screen Technologies and Innovation at Ulster University, and built the Ulster Screen Academy, which has about 873 students registered across 10 degree programs that connect into our conversations today. And then building teams, commercial teams, right the way through to I'm also involved in research and development in this space and future capability building. So I am director of the CoStar Screen Lab, CoStar being a large UK government, the AHRC UKRI funded research network in the UK that we'll talk a little bit about. And then I'm a member of the board of the British Film Institute.
Thank you very much. That's obviously a really wide range of perspectives on this topic in a really wide range of geographies. So I think it's going to be a really rich discussion. Thank you. And I've got so many questions to get through. I probably won't get through all of them. But just to start from all of you, in your view, what do you think are the most essential conditions for nurturing and retaining creative talent today? And obviously interested in how those views might differ across your different sectors and geographies. Anish, do you want to start?
That's a wonderful question. So when we're talking, and I'm going to bring this to the Armenian context, I would say when we began our most essential programs in the development of creative industries in Armenia, the biggest challenge was that the communities of artists were very scattered, and everyone was kind of creating in their own echo chamber. So it was really hard for new artists to come in, to create and to innovate the system overall. So I think like one of the big ones would be creating an infrastructure and a pipeline that would support artists and combine them, and also change the understanding of what art and what culture is, and what those sectors are, because oftentimes it ends up being very solidified and very closed. While we are trying to make it clear that creative industries can include all kinds of sectors, and the collaboration between those sectors is what's essential and what's going to eventually innovate the industry. So that would be the one, and I think also bringing new professions to Armenia, because, for example, I'm also coming from the film industry, and I see oftentimes that there are film productions that need distributors, and there are none in Armenia. And professions like that, where they think that people think there will not be a demand in Armenia, so they don't pursue those professions, and then Armenian filmmakers need the distributors, but they can't find in the Armenian context, so they go outside. So there is this catch-22, which like it needs to be solved. So I think encouraging and educating people that there are so many different professions in the industry and that they can pursue and excel in is also an important one.
Thank you. It's interesting. Your first point was very reflective of what we were hearing about had happened in Georgia as well. So that's an interesting point to pick up on. Milivoj, what?
Well, since I'm coming from Macedonia, and in Macedonia, visual effects industry was not existing in 90s when we started. So actually we have to invent not just ourselves, but we should reinvent the whole industry in Macedonia. And actually we started by ourselves in 90s, but we figure out by the end of 90s that we need a broader reach. And somehow we make a few steps forward and look up to the next 5 years, and we figure out how to get involved a lot of young people, actually students from even the primary schools, just to get exposed to the new technology at that time for them in Macedonia. So we reach out to all the schools that at that time had IT classrooms, but there was no content in the classrooms. So we figure out how to establish a kind of virtual classroom that will work in 40 different schools together on those computers in those schools. And we exposed over 2,000-3,000 students that were interested in those faculty classes. And out of those students, 2,000-3,000, I think that most of the companies that are right now in our industry came from that group of people. So right now we have a lot of gaming companies, we have different entertainment, different type of entertainment industry businesses, but even some of the visual effects companies rise from that classrooms. On the other side, because our industry is very, how should I say, fluid, we have to reinvent every 5 to 10 years, and we go through different changes and processes. And every 5 to 10 years, you have to reinvent yourself. And that also stays for the education process. If we were teaching people like 20 years ago about the primary skills, now we start using some virtualization processes, and now we are talking, as you said, like virtual production was very active, but now it's augmented reality was in one time, but now it's artificial intelligence. So we are doing a lot of investment in our studio just to keep the pace. And at this moment, like 3 years ago, we also invested in one stage, like 400 square meters just for visual production. But it's more like experimental that we are using it, because we are going through that process, integrating artificial intelligence with virtual productions and motion capture techniques and everything, just to see the first step to be a bit upfront of the whole industry, at least as much as we can. We have a good opportunity to work to the greatest studios in the world, and we are happy that we started really early on our path working with Industrial Lights and Magic. We have Ben here from that studio, and they were the founders of our industry. So they're like godfathers in visual effects industry. And we learn a lot from their teams, because we worked with them since 2007. So actually they somehow establish all these procedures and help us to go through the processes and teach us a lot about the processes. And we are grateful for that. And on the other side, we try to implement all these things that we learned from the business transfer it to our training center, because there is no training center in Macedonia on that level. So we have to do it and produce the students and produce the capacity for all the industry by ourselves. So we are trying to implement everything that we learn, every new process or every new technology that's coming in, to just transfer. And every few years we have to redo our curriculums and changing to be a little bit different than the previous. And in today's environment, we see that artificial intelligence is growing rapidly fast. And let's say that in the last, like 3 years ago, there was 0% of artificial intelligence involved in our projects. We get to like 25% this year. So it's going, but it's going slow. You should see like progressing like 5-10% a year. But it will get from this point, I think the next point will be like 40-50%, and the next point will be 80% in a few years from now. So we have to be available.
I think your point about reinvention within the creative industries is something that we all recognise that we have to deal with on a regular basis. But we're maybe going to have to start reinventing ourselves a little bit more quickly, I think, in the context of AI, perhaps. And I mean, that's an incredible story about the going from the classroom and essentially building your workforce from. For the future, which all those people are now working in the industry. That's a great example. Thank you, Declan.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what has been said resonates with us in Northern Ireland, and I think Claudetta talked about it earlier on as well. There's an infrastructure piece here where, excuse me, where it's about people. This is an industry about people, and we don't have stories, we don't have ideas without people, and we need to realise that. Our real value is in the IP or the intellectual property that people generate. And so, but, to create a workforce, to retain a workforce, there are a lot of different lines of attack. And so in Northern Ireland, we've actually introduced opportunities at school level with cinema clubs. We have a unique ecosystem for screen education in Europe. And this is something that the BFI identified in sort of a pan-European study. We have also unique qualifications at secondary school in moving image arts, for example, that connect animation to film. But then it is about thinking about all of the various prongs of the industry. So you have to remember that you have a workforce. You have to look at making sure that they're tooled, not just for the future, but that they're actually tooled to work in the way we need them to right now. And that isn't always taken for granted. And so we need to build a lot of opportunities for training and development in the existing workforce, and then looking where the challenges are. So in Northern Ireland, for example, in new technologies like artificial intelligence, looking at complex scanning and virtual production and all of that as an umbrella term, I realised very, very early on that we needed the long game as well. And so we set up a thing called the Ulster Screen Academy that connects to university. We've grown that from about 100 sort of graduates in about against 2 degree programs into 9 or 10 degree programs, many of them endorsed by companies like Epic Games and so on. Because convergence is a real thing for our industry right now. We see this very definitely in the virtual production studios that we've built, called Studio Ulster, where we have C++ programmers, those who are 3D designers, now working alongside set builders and the art department and DOPs and producers and directors. We don't necessarily need all of those people to retrain and suddenly speak the language of visual effects, but they need to understand what the tool is and how they can tell stories with it. And I think that this is something that we're looking at across the industry. To get people into this industry, I think there's a number of things. They need to see an infrastructure. They need to see an industry. They need to see it as an opportunity. We need to identify real careers in that space. That means you need to build in a trajectory for them, because that, where they're headed, what that development looks like for people is critical to them. We lose most people from moving from early entrant into established. That's the time that most people step out of this industry, because they don't get the opportunity to convert properly into real work and good work, and in the sense, to use that term that was used earlier today. And so that opportunity to really think about, and then the other side of this is that trajectory is a path for them in the industry, but then the culture of this thing. Scaling isn't about size. Scaling is about alignment. If you want to grow your workforce in the creative industries, it's about alignment with policy. It's alignment with ability. It's alignment with talent training, early training, getting people in to imagine themselves in this industry. They can see this. I have to now compete with sectors like fintech and cyber to draw people in to my industry. I need people on the set that are capable of being in those other sectors, and we also need to find ways to pay them competitively, and that's very, very difficult in a sense. Many of them find it more rewarding. Many of them find it much more interesting ultimately as careers, but unless they see that as an opportunity. So scaling is about alignment, and then thinking about the talent as infrastructure is really, really critical here. We often build, and I think it is important to build facilities. It's, really good talent is attracted to good facilities where they can see how they might express themselves in that space, but without a trajectory for them to understand how they can get into it, move through it, and move on and move into maybe other parts of the career. And then the culture. More increasingly, I see it with young staff. The staff that I have, or the younger staff, I would call them. It's about culture for them. There's an economy of the heart at play here. This is about stepping in. They've made deliberate decisions to be involved in the creative sector. And so there's an opportunity for them to want to align with peers that think like them but are complementary, where they can be involved in storytellers. Most of them are storytellers. Most of them want to create and be creative. And I think we need to empower them to be able to do that. And so we need to put in the types of training across schools, across colleges, apprenticeships, not necessarily going to university, but also universities, right the way into not forgetting about the workforce we already have. We need to bring them with us as well. And in Northern Ireland, we do a lot of work supported by Northern Ireland Screen, of course, and other agencies, and indeed the Ulster Screen Academy, to train the workforce in new technologies. There are about 1,200 AAA crew in Belfast that work across. We've always punched above our weight, I guess, for the size of the country. And we've already trained 300 of those staff in virtual production techniques in anticipation of some of the new technologies in the studios that we're bringing online.
Thank you. That's really interesting. I think about what the points you were making about if you want to grow at scale, you actually have to be working at all of the different levels and thinking about those lifelong careers. And you mentioned Northern Ireland Screen there, and it'd be really interesting to know what sort of levels of investment you think it needs to be able to scale in that way, in the way that you've done very successfully.
Northern Ireland's at a scale, and I mean, and I think many of our international partners that are here today are probably not, dissimilar scales necessarily. That it creates a sandbox. A sandbox is, for us, by that I mean we have really good alignment from government. We have worked very hard to build the data. Andrew pointed to how we've generated data in the UK, and of course in Ireland for us as well. There is an opportunity then to build policy. If you can build policy, then we bring political support. Political support will bring investment, at government level, investment and policy, and then thinking about agencies like Northern Ireland Screen who are empowered by that investment, for example. And then the BFI, of course, have a role in this. There's a BFI cluster in Northern Ireland. They've invested substantively in training and training development across the UK as well. That type of alignment creates an environment, a really good environment. It is about the ecosystem. We cannot build facilities, studios, businesses in the creative technology, the creative industry sector without building the ecosystem, and it should not be forgotten if you're trying to develop these in regional areas. I mean, I think, for us, we do not want to try and be London. London is London. We can't compete with London directly, but we can compete at a global level around cost and around capability. And I think we build Northern Ireland, for us is a very different proposition, but it is that difference that actually makes us attractive in a way. Being able to regionalise, we should embrace our regionality because we can bring different locations, different types of people, a different experience for productions nationally and internationally. So Northern Ireland Screen in that context provides a substantive amount of training that enables us to train the workforce. And they were very involved in investing heavily in training the workforce and ready in preparation for virtual production. That has worked very well for us already. We've done quite a few productions. We're now building a capability in Northern Ireland that is on par with Los Angeles or anywhere else in the world. And some of that long term, I would say there's a short term intervention required there. Quite a lot of these new technologies like Gen AI and artificial intelligence we'll hear more about today and so on. Right the way through to virtual production. Some of this technology has been around a while, but it is developing and so disruptive and at pace that it's almost, we have to consider where we are with our existing workforce. That's the interaction and the intervention that's needed right now. But we also need to play a long game. I need a sustainable workforce. I need a mobility in the workforce. Right now we have in our industries what I would call digital unicorns. There are certain people that float around the different companies globally that are very, very hard to find. And because of convergence across game engine technology, across visual effects, they're becoming increasingly required across other sectors also, digital twinning, architecture, and it's becoming more and more difficult. That pushes costs up, that pushes labour costs up. We want people paid well competitively, but we need mobility in the workforce. That isn't just on the island of Ireland, in my case, that is internationally. And, that for us, we have to bring people to Northern Ireland to pull in the level of experience. Studio Ulster can work at any level, it can work at AAA, but also right down to building small, micro and SME companies because of the investment in research and development. So alignment with key agencies, I think Claudetta talked a lot about this, so I think was really interesting this morning, alignment with policy, investment, and then looking at the commercial sector. The commercial sector, we can't, it's not a question of dictating. You design facilities, you design infrastructure with talent, not for talent. And I think that's a really critical piece from our perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very, very good point to note. Thank you for that. Anush, can we come back to you? So with creative Armenia's incubators and art box accelerators, how are you equipping the emerging artists to towards that success, and how do you identify and support high potential talent that doesn't necessarily come from a traditional background?
So with Artbox, the journey started actually with because that was the first creative incubator in Armenian context. The journey started right from the beginning to develop the system, the ecosystem that would embrace and kind of help the industry experts and the artists and different stakeholders to understand what this is. In the very beginning, I think like 4 years ago when we started, artists didn't even know what the creative incubator would help them do. So it started with teaching and explaining, holding info sessions and breaking it down. But beyond Artbox, there is the other component where we were also equipping the artists with trainings in IP law, because that's also something they needed to learn how to kind of hold and understand their intellectual property rights, as well as the export and import of artworks. And with Artbox, the way that in a nutshell, the program is a 8-week incubation with workshops with international mentors. And the mission was to have these mentors come from international background to break the barrier and to help us innovate also the perspectives of the artists, and to help them think bigger, because oftentimes they end up working only in the local context and not really competing or collaborating with the international markets and fields. stages. So that was the purpose of it. And then all throughout the 8-week workshops, they developed their business plans and realized at the end the projects that they worked on. And how to identify the high kind of potential, the potential project is, well, first of all, do they come with their own teams? Do they have an idea that has a potential to reach the market, to have also profitability, which is an important component that we were working on to bring the projects that would have profitability and in a more kind of fundamental way, make it clear that art is not just a consumer of the resources of the country, but it can also provide and produce and secure a great turnover. Choosing the projects and the businesses that have that potential to then generate income and revenues and have strong teams and clear idea and a very future-oriented looking. So that's a clear kind of a green light for us that, okay, these are the teams and these are the projects that can go far. And another thing we were really looking deeply into is how to create the sustainability for these projects, because you can have funding and you can and I know we will talk about it later, I know about that, but you can have funding and you can help projects kind of take ground and move on, but it will all kind of end at some point, the funding, and then what? So it was also important for us to create a system that would encourage the sustainability and for them to think about it from the very beginning. So we're doing this, but what's the next step and how we can create a system within our work that would make us our work continuous.
And on that particular program, were there key international markets that you were focused on in terms of particular territories, or and were your mentors therefore drawn from those markets, or was it a little bit more responding to the creative drive and then trying to find the markets for those ideas? Which way round did you approach that equation, I guess? On the European market, so our mentors were coming. The way we chose them, the criteria was, we didn't want just people who were workshop leaders. We wanted people that were coming from the practical field of like doing the job. So that was our approach. We focused on the European market. So the UK was one. We had Denmark. We had a professional from Lego House. We had France, Belgium, Latvia, Litva, and countries like that. So it was all spread throughout Europe. And our criteria was choosing people that would have a strong experience in the creative industries and would be on the forefront of innovating it, and so could bring not just theoretical knowledge and just a blueprint of how to do things, but would help and guide these teams and these projects to really succeed at that time. Thank you. Lívor, you talked a little bit earlier about obviously how you kind of had to build everything from scratch, pretty much, and have very, very successfully done that. And we sort of touched on AI. What are the other sort of gaps and opportunities you're seeing now, kind of within the talent pipeline, in Macedonia and for your industry in particular?
Well, generally, I don't see people that are aware of how rapidly is progressing artificial intelligence, and it's not just in our industry, but in all the industries. And the moment we are facing right now is how to prepare ourselves for the next 3 to 5 years, because it will be completely different environment that we are in from now. In 3 to 5 years, it will be what you're having as a skill set right now. It will be not important that much. So you have to choose which skill sets are important, and to promote them, and to invest more in those skill sets, and to be prepared for the next, let's say, next period of our life. I think that AI is right now at the, how should I say, just starting like a baby steps that was in the 80s, maybe internet was starting in the 80s. We cannot imagine ourselves 40 years later, we cannot imagine ourselves without internet. In case of like shutdown of electricity or something, there is a panic in the society. That's how big importance the internet has in our lives, everyday lives. If your phone, you have internet, but if your phone is not next to you, you get a panic. You cannot contact anybody, you don't have information about your bills, you don't have a communication with your company, you don't have anything. You're like isolated.
Can't buy anything.
Yeah, so you're isolated. Imagine how important it will be when you also this translate to the artificial intelligence, when you rely on that intelligence to help you. And what kind of skills are needed so you can use it in your favor.
And other than AI, are there any other areas that you're pinpointing that you're thinking that's something that we don't have now that we're really going to need in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think that as I see right now, the problem will be that a lot of technical stuff and a lot of like grounds for building the artist will be wiped out. It will be very difficult to bring new generation of artists because you start with building them for years. It's not just you're becoming a great artist. You have like periods of 4 years, 8 years to get a senior artist. But if you're in your first 5, 6 years, you're completely wiped out because you don't have a relevance. Whatever you can do, artificial intelligence can do it 10 times faster, 10 times better. No one will use it. You will not be employed for that reason. So you get that you have like premium artists that will be very important. Like in orchestra, you have a dirigent. So you need those type of people that are like highly skilled, that can use the artificial intelligence to make great creations. But on the other side, the lower part will be just wiped out. And because right now you have some level of great artists. But that's for now. What will happen in 10 years? Because they will get older, they will go to retire, and there will be nobody behind them to replace them because the new generation will not get to that level because they don't have that experience. They will not have a chance to get that experience. For me, that's the biggest issue right now, how we prepare for that middle range, how to skip that. You cannot skip middle range. Yeah,
no, that's an interesting point. It's whether you can fast track people to that point or not. But we have to. I said to somebody last night over dinner, "What's the things that we're hopeful about?" So on that point, we touched on this slightly earlier in terms of you talking about creating an inclusive culture where people felt that that they had peers around them that they could relate to. But for all of you, what are the other things that you think kind of influence whether people go or stay? Because obviously, we all need the workforce. We know with a peripatetic freelance community that people will leave and go elsewhere if the conditions, are not right. And we've touched on some of those conditions in terms of good work as well. But what are the things, Anush, can I start with what makes people go or stay?
So in the context, you mean the experts and the workforce?
In terms of creative talent in general, I guess. What are the factors that attract somebody to a certain place or and retain them, which is obviously critical?
Well, I think like the opportunities in the Armenian context, if there is a certain level that you excel at, and then there is like the industry doesn't hold any more opportunities for you, that's when those people would leave. But on the other hand, if you have more entrepreneurship skills, those would keep you in the country, and so there is, I would say there is a lot of potential for creative entrepreneurship if you have that in you. you would stay and you would be the leader of a certain industry. So there is a lot of that. But how to keep them, how to retain that is to always invest in the innovation. And so AI is one, and other technologies. So we are always, from our side, we're bringing in conversations with high-tech ministry, Ministry of Economy, and all these other stakeholders to kind of define a policy that would help to bring this innovation and keep it. So whether that's through programs or whether that's from finding the infrastructure and the opportunities for the future, that would really engage different cohorts of artists and help them stay. But it needs to be continuous because, right now you see there are like a short period of time when the market and the industry is active, and then it kind of may die down, and then there is again another reawakening. But it needs to be continuous, and those people, I also believe in empowering people to kind of become the future leaders. And so, if you are supporting someone or a group that to really achieve and be empowered and be an innovator, it's then up to them to continue that cycle and to create a chain. So, like a ripple effect, you may say. So yeah, I also do believe that we always look at the artists as creative ambassadors also for their country and for the industry. So yeah, including them in that conversation and creating a kind of wider community is also important.
And Milvoy, obviously you're running a business, you're not a policymaker, but businesses obviously have to kind of deal with brain drain and people going elsewhere. So what from a company perspective, what can you do to I guess create the conditions that make people want to stay?
Yeah, usually brain drain is a classical form of something happening in this Balkan region, especially. It was due to the better economic situation in the European countries or the over the seas in Canada. But lately, in the last 2 years, we are getting more and more people getting back because the situation in those developed countries are getting worse and worse. We have 3 persons come from Canada and 3 or 4 persons come from Europe because the salaries are not that great, because let's say that our salaries is half of the salaries in Germany or UK. But on the other side, with that half, in Macedonia, you will live 5 times better life than the same double salary in Germany or UK, or in Canada is even worse. So they figure out that going there and living there like students, they get a great job, they get great salaries, but they still can afford just student life with those salaries. Even if they're well paid, but the expenses and everything is high. So one is economic side of it. So people are coming back generally from these developed countries because developed countries are now in stagnation. On the other side, there is also what can you offer them as an artist, as a creative. So that's another side. If they don't feel, if they don't feel that you're giving them enough freedom or giving them enough space to develop themselves, they will also lose the interest. So great projects are always very important. That's why we are investing a lot into new technologies. And some of the projects we are doing are completely non-commercial projects that we are just testing things. And they're more interested working on those projects than actually on the project, because we are making money on the commercial projects, but we are keeping the people on these creative projects that are actually investment in some future or education. So is balancing in the industry. Yeah, if you're running a business, you have to balance.
Yeah, I mean that's really reflective of what you were saying earlier, isn't it, Declan? It's not just about the economic incentive, the financial incentive. People are storytellers and creators. So
yeah, it is that the Irish are good travellers. We're everywhere. I think honestly, if they colonised the moon, the first bar there would probably be an Irish bar. But there's a world where we have an international workforce now, like everywhere else in the world. And I think, going back to what I said earlier on, it is about infrastructure. They want to be able to work in the best facilities in the world. They want the infrastructure isn't just about capital builds. It's also about how they feel supported to do what they do. What do the project look like? And then that's about trajectory. This is this idea that they need to understand that there's a future for them in this space. And also, in our case, we invested $100 million in Studio Ulster. That is a unique building globally right now. It combines 3D, 4D volumetric scanning. It has motion capture stages. It has really advanced in-camera visual effects stages. They want to see that there's opportunities there and how that technology can be applied. We're seeing new projects come out of a facility like ours now that couldn't be made before because it all sits under one roof. And this is technologies that kind of exist in different iterations all around the world. And so they're getting to work on some of the very best projects in the world in Northern Ireland. And that's a critical piece. It's about visibility. They see now an industry that's aspirational for the generation that are still at university or still at school. But there is a horizon there for them that says you don't need to leave. You actually can get to work on some of the very best projects globally right here. And I think while we can continue that critical mass, that's interesting, because if we don't, we will lose. They will move to creative and hubs or busy hubs. Some people say you want to build the best facilities in the world. I don't. I'd like to build the busiest, the ones that people are getting to work on very cool projects. That will keep a critical mass of people in place if the utility is high, because then they can pay the mortgage, they can pay the rent, they can pay whatever it is that they need to do and have a good quality lifestyle. And that is the culture. The culture then is, who are they working with? Is there a culture that's like-minded? Do they get an opportunity to create? And I don't disagree with that point. Quite a lot of my teams they'd be very excited about research and development. And that is also something we haven't touched on, because that is critical also for looking at the future. I would take a slightly different view around things like artificial intelligence. Rather than riding a wave and kind of waiting to see what happens here, we need to take control of that. This is an industry that has always been full of innovators. We need to step in and say, well, this is the trajectory that we want to build for this. How does that look? And, even within organizations like the British Film Institute, we've set up a new subgroup called Future Production. That is about creatives. Rather than saying we don't want to deal with this and we don't want to see this happening, is actually, where are the opportunities? What is the thought leadership around that? How do we, as an industry, shape this? There are huge opportunities, and much of it points towards empowering creativity. It isn't necessarily that we will change the weighting of jobs. Things will change unquestionably. Where the jobs are will change, but enabling technology to tell stories, iteration might even indeed save many of our VFX companies who are struggling because of change and iterative change, where we build in things like automation and automative tools and so on. And so there are worlds there where there is opportunity, always in change. Disruption brings opportunity. I think as an industry, for us, we have got to get in, put our face in the wind and really understand. But if we do not have the workforce that can unlock that for us, then we get boxed off and we wait for the change and we wait for other countries to innovate and we wait for other parts of the world to come and tell us this is how this is done. All of the countries represented in this room have the capability to do this. We need to invest in it, though. We need to build strong training programs that are not necessarily about what it will look like. I don't back into the workforce that had to step away. That's also then thinking about, and something we've touched on already, sustainability. How do we sustain this industry and how do we sustain the growth? Because we need different types of people, but that diversity is what we've always been about, but we need to really embrace that now.
Thank you for that. I think that's a brilliant point to finish on. I know I've not got through anything like all of my questions, but I think we're probably out of time. But I think that challenge of, we've heard some incredible stories of how people have grown the sector, in some cases from nothing, with the investment support, with new and innovative models. But I guess the challenge now is for all of us, how do we take that next step forward, the next step in growth, and how do we take control of the future proofing of that, not letting other people come in and tell us how to do it, because that regional focus and knowing that we're working with and representing our communities is absolutely key. Thank you. It's been such a fascinating discussion and really interesting to hear such a diverse range of stories about the work that you've been doing. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you all, really. What a rich conversation. And I think we are, wherever we're working, we are nothing without people and creative talent, and all of your stories said that very loudly. And I think segues very well into what Sam Michelle is going to come and talk to us about. Which is some quick insights into some research out of the Beyond conference in 25 about the creator economy. So Sam, over to you.
Thank you very much, Claire. Thanks everybody for coming. I put the timer on because I realised that I am the last person between you and lunch. So I will definitely have an incentive for all of us to keep this very quick. I'm one of the directors of Beyond Studio. We produce the Beyond conference, and I've seen some people here who have visited us in the past. And I would love it if some of those who haven't been before would like to come next year. We're in Salford from the 24th to the 26th of November. If you've not been before, we have 1,000 people join us from business, creative, policymakers, researchers, artists, from a whole range of nations, including lots that are represented here. We had over 35 last year, and that's largely to our partnership with the British Council. And we work very closely with lots of UK-based research institutions. If you want more info, there's a QR code. We love a QR code. There's a QR code with a report of lots of information about Beyond on the screen. In previous years, we've covered things like AI and sustainability and creative cities. And I wanted to tell you a little story about what's happening this year. So we were looking around, casting around, working out what we were going to cover, what themes would resonate the most. And my kids inspired me slightly. They don't watch TV. They're on TikTok. They're on YouTube. And when I look at their friends as well, their media consumption is completely different from anything that I consume. And they talk about people I've never heard of who have huge followings. I'm like, what do you refer to these people as? And they're influencers. And the first thing that comes to mind when I think of an influencer is somebody, posing to a camera. Get ready with me while I do something, or some stunt where I'm pouring ice water over my head. So I thought, I know what. Where do you go to find out what someone is online? You go to a large language model, and you ask it to draw you a picture of what it thinks content creators are, because that's the average of everything, right? I'm not sure that's very good, and the guys in the corners look really cross. So I tried again, and it got even blander. So I thought this doesn't really represent the breadth of content creators. There must be better, so I went for language instead. So Adobe have a report out in 2020, and they were talking about content creators, a very generic description, and then Wikipedia has a very generic description. And then I thought, what I'll do is I'll ask ChatGPT to look at those and add in creative economy, and it comes up with a third one, which I think is probably a good description. And then pondering it a little bit more, thinking, that's weird. That sounds a lot like everybody who works in the creative economy, artists, people working in film and TV, and where do these worlds coincide, and what size are they? So we started looking at the research, and this is what we found. Now, these are the stats on this slide are from the two bottom ones, looking at the size of the creator economy, are from 2022 in YouTube's case and 2023 in TikTok's case. And as you'll all be very aware, both of those platforms have grown absolutely enormously in that short period of time. So those 70,000 jobs and 3 billion contribution to the UK economy is probably a factor of 3 or 4 times bigger now, maybe even more. The thing is, we don't know because there's no research that covers that at this moment. So one of the things that we've been doing is starting to look and argue and try and convince people to do more research in this sector to find out who these people are and what they're up to and what motivates them, what skills they have, what demands they have, and what impact that might have on policy making. So I wanted to talk about these guys very briefly. I won't go through the stats because they're on the screen, but it's an interesting homegrown story of a group who started out messing about on online games in 2013 and started streaming on Twitch. And you may or may not have come across them before, but what you can see is that over the last 10 years or so, they have built a fairly substantial media company and a cross-media company as well. So not only are they on YouTube and TikTok, but they're also now on TV. So actually, if you are interested in an insight into the creator economy, it's worth having a look at the Sidemen documentary on Netflix, which talks about their whole story. It's really well made and shows the growth of the group and the challenges that they faced as well. what I find also interesting is how that group has moved like a more traditional media company and developed side ventures. They've gone into merchandise, restaurants, and so on. It's worth having a look at just seeing that impact. I was thinking about this and thinking, let's skip this for time, how is the more traditional establishment industry responding to this? And I think there's two really interesting examples. So Goalhanger, if you've not come across them before, was started by a very famous footballer in the UK called Gary Lineker, and the former controller of sport at ITV and one of the producers at BBC Radio 5. So very traditional media folk. And they started off making sports documentaries. And only 3 years ago, they started making podcasts. And now they have the top 4 podcasts in the UK's 10, and they do 40 million downloads a month. So by contrast, BBC Sounds does 100 million downloads per month. So they are a substantial company in 3 years' time, and that wouldn't have existed before. Channel 4 launched a little while back a new strategy to transfers. They saw the big streamers come along and take over large chunks of their market. You see the ad market drop, and the challenges for traditional TV broadcasters developed 4.0. Actually, I'm not sure. They keep changing the name, but I think it's 4.0 at the moment, where they would look, as you can see, to move a big chunk of their viewership and therefore revenue online. And they started with short-form content. And you can see they're having substantial success in making that work for them. What I think is really interesting with that movement is how they've just started commissioning TV-length projects with their audience in mind that's going out on YouTube. And you can see the shift from traditional TV broadcast into YouTube. And it's very focused on that content creator type of market. So I think these are some of the opportunities that I can see that we're going to get into at Beyond particularly. I think there's a really interesting perspective for policymakers and for people working in the traditional creative industries. These two worlds are beginning to come together as we see people who've developed projects and art on streaming platforms and YouTube and TikTok and Instagram move into more traditional settings. I see this happening in the location-based entertainment world. And it also, the removal of gatekeepers has decentralized the access to large audiences for people who can create on YouTube, for example, without having a TV commissioner or a funder in the way of them actually being able to do stuff. I think from a policy perspective, there's also some really significant challenges in that if all those platforms that I mentioned, they're controlled by massive tech companies, 2 US, 1 Chinese, and that has some interesting and challenging policy issues for us long term. I think on the skills front as well, there's lots of skills locked up in academic institutions that the content creators don't have access to. Those two worlds are beginning to look at one another, but they're quite separate at the moment. And I think internationally as well, we don't understand yet. We know these are huge global audiences, but we don't understand, for example, how the UK audience accesses the world and what impact it has on the rest of the world through those different platforms. So that's a little insight into our thinking at the moment. Like I said, we don't really know that much at the moment. We think, and our gut tells us, and the stats that we can find tell us that this is a huge change in the creative economic landscape and is likely to be more significant as time goes on. And hopefully we'll have a lot more research to talk about in November. Did I mention it's the 24th to the 26th of November in Manchester? We would welcome you all. In fact, we've got a sample of the weather for you today, just so you get used to it. There is no medieval alleyways in Manchester, at least not as far as I know. But with that, I'd just like to say thank you. Myself, Tara, the other director, will be around. Thank you.